The dartboard you know today, crisp colours, razor-thin wires, massive scoring, didn't always look like this. In fact, for most of its history, playing darts was a brutal grind of bounce-outs, broken points and sheer frustration. So how did we go from rugged pub boards, where winning sometimes came down to pure luck, to today's precision-engineered targets? The answer is a hidden story of innovation, struggle, and one forgotten genius who changed everything. Let's dive into the forgotten evolution of the dartboard. Before darts became a polished sport, it was pure pub entertainment, rough, improvised, and messy. The earliest dartboards weren't bristle, plastic, or electronic. They were chunks of elm wood, soaked in water overnight to keep them soft enough for dart tips to stick. But there was a major catch. As the wood dried, it would crack and split. Players had to constantly spray or soak the boards just to keep them usable. For a brief period, some boards were even made of paper, a cheap fix, but one that barely lasted a few nights of serious play. It wasn't until the 1930s that a breakthrough arrived. Bristle boards, made from compressed sisal fibers, burst onto the scene. These boards self-healed after every dart throw, lasted longer, and needed no watering, a total game changer. But here's the thing. Even with the arrival of bristle boards, the real problems, thick wiring, staples, and deadly bounce-outs, still plagued the game, and that's where things start to get interesting. If you think playing darts today is hard, try throwing at a retro board from the 1970s or 1980s. Instead of the razor-thin wires you see now, they use thick, round metal wires hammered directly onto the surface. And to keep those heavy wires from sliding around, they hammered in massive metal staples, often right into the scoring areas. The result? Smaller targets, unpredictable bounces, and bounce-outs that could cost you an entire match.
That's 3 or 4 bounce-outs off 5. He's in an excellent mood, John.
25.
It gets worse. The wires weren't locked in place, they moved. One hard throw into a wire could actually shrink or distort the scoring segments. Imagine lining up a perfect treble 20 shot only for the wire to tilt inward and block the target, or worse, to bounce your dart halfway across the room. Even the bullseye, while technically larger back then, wasn't safe. It was surrounded by extra staples and crisscrossed with wire, making clean hits far rarer. And yet, players like Eric Bristow and John Lowe still managed to average in the mid-90s on these medieval torture devices. In today's terms, their performances would rank much, much higher. Because here's the thing, modern studies show that retro dartboards reduce scoring areas by at least 15%, and sometimes as much as 23% depending on the board. In short, every match was a battle not just against an opponent, but against the board itself. Ever wonder why dartboards aren't numbered in simple order, 1, 2, 3, and so on? The answer goes back to a forgotten genius named Brian Gamlin. In the late 1800s, Gamlin devised a numbering system designed to do one thing: punish inaccuracy. Instead of clustering high numbers together, he scattered them around the board. Miss the 20, you might land in the 5 or 1. Chase a big triple, miss slightly, and you pay the price. It's not random, it's deliberate chaos. Gamlin's layout forces players to combine accuracy, strategy, and risk management on every throw. And it wasn't just about the numbers. The layout balanced odd and even numbers to keep scoring paths flexible. The bullseye was placed dead center, acting as a high-risk, high-reward shot. Doubles and triples introduced a multiplier system that transformed simple target practice into tactical warfare. In a way, Gamlin's design was far ahead of its time. It made darts a battle of precision and nerve, even if the boards themselves were working against you. And remarkably, despite all the advances in dartboard technology, his numbering system has never changed. It's a living relic, a reminder that even with modern boards, the real enemy is still your own accuracy. Everything changed when dartboard makers finally tackled the real enemy, the wires. Instead of heavy round wires nailed on top, blade wire systems were introduced. These wires weren't just thinner, they were engineered to sink into the board itself, embedded deep enough that errant darts would glide over them instead of bouncing off. And the numbers don't lie. The playable scoring area grew by nearly 15%. Wire thickness shrank by a staggering 84%. Bounce outs, once a frustrating regular part of the game, became rare. The colours got sharper, the surface looked cleaner, And suddenly, hitting triple 20s wasn't just a dream, it became a real, repeatable weapon.
Michael may miss and Michael may hit. They're both on nines. They're both on a nine. This is insane. Come on now.
Even the bullseye improved. Gone were the wire-cross nightmares of old boards. The center target became cleaner, smoother, and far easier to attack.
1-4-7 break. And he gets it! Michael van Gerwen in sensational style! A 9-darter for MVG, and he's found another way to do it.
1-4-7, the perfect leg, incorporating the bullseye.
But here's the twist. While today's boards are more forgiving, some argue they've made elite-level darts look deceptively easier than it really is. Back then, averaging 90 meant you were a monster. Today, it's expected, and part of that is thanks to this quiet technological revolution. The board got smarter, the game got faster, and the margins for error and excuses got a lot smaller. Today, when fans look back at darting legends like Eric Bristow and John Lowe, there's a dangerous myth that creeps in. They couldn't compete with modern players. But that myth falls apart when you understand what they were actually playing on. Studies show that if you adjust for board improvements, just factoring in bigger target areas and fewer bounce outs, Bristow's world final averages from the mid-1980s would jump astronomically. In 1984, his 97.5 average would become at least 106.7, possibly as high as 117.4. In 1985, his 97.51 average translates almost identically, 106.8 to 117.5. Even in 1986, his 94.48 would comfortably hit 100.6 to 111. And that's only adjusting for wire thickness and segment size, not even accounting for the extra bounce outs and deflections that robbed players blind. Players like Bristow and Lowe weren't just good, they were phenomenal. They put up world-class performances on boards that actively worked against them. Meanwhile, modern players benefit from bigger scoring areas, better surfaces, and drastically fewer bounce outs. This isn't to take anything away from today's elite. The talent pool is deeper, competition is fiercer. But when you factor in technology, it's clear. Legends like Bristow and Lowe wouldn't just survive today, they would thrive. They weren't just products of their time. They were pioneers battling against equipment that modern players can hardly imagine. When you step back and look at the full picture, one thing becomes clear. The dartboard's evolution didn't just change the game, it changed what it meant to be great. Players from the past weren't just battling nerves, rivals, or the pressure of a world title. They were battling the very boards themselves, thicker wires, moving segments, staple traps waiting to deflect their best shots. Every bounce out could destroy a lead. Every missed double wasn't always a mistake. Sometimes it was a cruel twist of bad luck from the equipment. Today's players, while absolutely world class, throw on boards that are faster, cleaner, and far more forgiving. Averages are up, finish percentages are up. But it's because the battlefield itself has changed. It's not a question of who's better, it's a reminder that greatness must be measured in context. Eric Bristow, John Lowe, Phil Taylor, they built their legacies swinging against unfair odds. Modern stars like Michael van Gerwen and Luke Humphries are taking darts even higher on a different, more refined stage. Different eras, different battles, but respect, that's timeless. Because true greatness isn't just about the final score. It's about what you had to overcome to get there. The dartboard didn't just evolve, it transformed from a cracked block of elmwood to a wire-stapled trap to the precision weapon players rely on today. And every step of that evolution shaped how the game is played, remembered, and respected.
Do it now.
And it happens! That has happened before!
But the dartboard is only half the story. Because while the boards got sharper, faster, and more forgiving, the players, the throws, and the entire game of darts evolved alongside them. If you want to see how the players, the strategies, and the sport itself transformed over time, make sure you don't miss our next video, where we dive deep into the full evolution of darts.